Trump Tower.
And all this has been unfolding in real time here on Fox and Friends this morning. Rich Edson is live in Washington, D.C., tracking this developing story. Good morning, Rich.
Hey, good morning, Pete, Abby, and Ed. President Trump is accusing President Obama of wiretapping him. Minutes ago, the president tweeted, "Terrible. Just found out that Obama had my wires tapped in Trump Tower just before the victory. Nothing found. This is McCarthyism." And added, quote, "How low has President Obama gone to tap my phones during the very sacred election process? This is Nixon Watergate. Bad or sick guy." In all, 6 tweets this morning, 4 of them regarding the alleged wiretaps. The president says nothing about who informed him the previous administration wiretapped Trump Tower or provide any further context or support of the claim. We've reached out to the White House to clarify this. There is an unconfirmed report on Breitbart claiming a radio host has requested an investigation into the previous administration's monitoring of the Trump campaign. The FBI did catch Michael Flynn, the then eventual and now former NSA director, communicating with the Russian ambassador Sergei Kislyak, though that was a function of a routine monitoring of the ambassador. This is just hours after the president's attorney general, Jeff Sessions, has agreed to answer questions to Congress regarding his contact with the Russian ambassador, even though he denied the meeting in his confirmation hearing. Several Democrats on the Senate Judiciary Committee have requested a hearing, and a Justice Department spokesperson says in a statement, quote, "In light of the letter received from senators late this afternoon, the attorney general will respond to their questions along with his amended testimony on Monday." Back to you guys.
All right, Rich, thank you for that. A lot to unwrap here.
So much to cover.
So much going on. Yeah,
Who better to bring in?
Dr. Bill Bennett, former Education Secretary, joins us again this morning. Doctor, good to have you here.
And we'll also note, as we should, Fox News contributor and host of the Bill Bennett Show on iTunes, which we always got to get in there for you. So, Mr. Secretary, I mean, it feels like unprecedented times, or maybe not, as the president refers to Nixon and Watergate. What are we seeing here with these accusations of wiretapping and the Russians and the president?
Well, we need to find out more, guys, obviously, but this is very serious. Under Bill Bennett's axiom in Washington, you're on offense or you're on defense. This can throw the Democrats back on defense big time. Look, this raises the whole question of the FISA legislation, Federal Intelligence Surveillance Act, which you remember was hotly debated. But there's no question under the law that you can do surveillance of private citizens when they're talking to foreign powers and so on. Did anyone conceive that a sitting president of the United States or his FBI or his Justice Department would use the FISA Act to listen in on the candidate for the other party in October, just before the election? That's the allegation here. That's what the president's saying. By the way, these are, what, 2 or 3 tweets? Folks, he's really hot on this one, as he should be. What will the American people think of this?
Well, and Secretary Bennett, you're right that we have to get more information. These are just reports, but the President of the United States is attaching his name at least to these allegations, but we have to dig for more evidence. You're absolutely right about that. But you're also right that this is raising profound questions about all of these leaks that they didn't come from nowhere. They came from somewhere in recent days where it appears like top officials, Obama holdovers, maybe FBI, maybe CIA, and elsewhere, have been leaking very specific information about conversations between General Flynn and Russians and others. So you can easily at least raise a question, if not connect the dots, that maybe this is where they're getting the information.
Yeah, I was reading fast this morning as watching the show and as you guys broke the news, and there was actually a fair amount written on this, Ed, in October. But there's so much going on. I think a lot of us didn't pay a lot of attention to it. But the New York Times, I think a couple of days ago, pointed out that the results of some of what was being found out by some intelligence agencies was spread pretty far and wide in the agencies before Obama left, so that a lot of people would have access to information they had no right to have access to. This could explain the widespread leaks we've been talking about. Again, that connection.
Interesting, though.
Now you got,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. Well, it's an interesting link here in that, you know, now you could have an investigation, couldn't you? And the investigation could be of just exactly what the FBI was doing. Once again, I remind everybody, all these calls by Darrell Issa and Schumer for independent counsel. There is no independent counsel. That statute expired 18 years ago. There is a special counsel. And you know where that special counsel lives? In the Justice Department. So whatever investigation takes place outside of Congress remains within the executive branch in the Justice Department. Lots of ironies here, lots of interesting things.
Yeah, sure. And we love getting your take because you've worked on both sides of the aisle here. You've worked for the media. You've also worked for administrations in the past. And what's so interesting about this...
Never the media. Never.
Well, you radio and podcasts.
He's his own media. He's his own media.
What's so interesting about this, Secretary, is we're not breaking the story because of some other outlet that, you know, the AP or something that's leaking this out. This is coming directly from the president, from his Twitter account. I can't imagine that he would be saying these things if he did not have real, concrete evidence to back it up with, right?
Yeah, well, again, the story I read this morning, it wasn't in quotes. It suggested that the FBI went to the FISA court. You remember that that's required to get a warrant. But it was too broad, and they were turned down the first time. But the second time, they were granted narrowly a permission to do this surveillance at Trump Tower. Who were they surveilling? Were they surveilling the presidential candidate? Man, this is potentially very explosive stuff.
Yeah, and the other question is how narrowly focused did that surveillance stay on whatever they thought they were looking at, and how long did it stick around? I think there's some speculation that it may have gone farther and wider than anyone thought. And your reference on the New York Times was that there was a declassification going on in the article that came out a couple of days ago. They're declassifying intelligence so that it could be wider spread, potentially where some of these leaks come from.
Yeah, well, other tweets, though, he's been tweeting all morning long. This one came out as well, Secretary. He says the first meeting that Jeff Sessions had with the Russian ambassador was set up by the Obama administration under education program for 100 ambassadors. What do you make of that whole story?
Yeah, well, look, first thing, we do have to concede that the problem with Jeff Sessions' response, and I know him very well, he's a totally honorable man, is that he answered the question the way he didn't have to. But he said, I had no communication with the Russian ambassador. What he meant to say clearly was he had no communication as a surrogate with the Russian ambassador, and that this thing was arranged by the State Department. He'll issue that clarification on Monday. But again, I don't think there's any there. If there were any there, we would know what it is, and we don't. I think Devin Nunes, chairman of House Intelligence, has been very forceful on this point.
Well, and come to find that Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, and others who have been criticizing Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General, for having meetings with the Russian ambassador, there were photos found of them doing the very same thing. So the only word that comes to mind is just totally hypocritical.
Yeah, well, you have what you call courtesy calls. Ed, you spend half your day when you're in the cabinet or in the Senate, greeting people who come in, and ambassadors is part of it. We're supposed to be cultivating good relations. By the way, how do you have a reset unless you shake people's hands?
Well, exactly.
Well, and Secretary Bennett, do you remember in 2012, I was covering President Obama. He's up for re-election. He sits down with President Medvedev at a summit, and a hot mic catches him saying, hey, tell Vladimir, which of course is Mr. Putin, who was the prime minister at the time, now President Russia, after I win re-election, I'll have more flexibility. Democrats seem to have forgotten that one.
Yeah, that was a pretty damning comment at the time, not played up by the mainstream press, but absolutely. No, the Democrats can't win this one. Republicans talk to ambassadors, we don't. But this other story that is intruded this morning is, man, it's a big deal.
Well, we love these insights when you come on Fox and Friends, but you can also get them at the Bill Bennett Show on iTunes. Check it out. Thanks for joining us. Have a wonderful Sunday, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Always so good to